Well, tonight we are going to talk about distracted. Who gets distracted easily? Yeah? I tell you what, it's no wonder because there are so many things distracting us and competing for our attention. We have mental distraction, we have physical distraction, and sometimes they join together and fight against us. Anybody? Yeah? I mean, I think some of you would agree, if you're anything like me, that more of my distractions are in my head than outside my body. Anybody? Yeah. So there is an addiction, an epidemic to our electronics. Anybody? And sadly, they serve a really important purpose. So it's kind of difficult, but more often they serve as a constant distraction. And so we carry those around in our pocket, just waiting for the next distraction. I mean, we can't get away from it, guilty. So tonight, I want to start with a PSA and end with a GSA. You good? Okay. Well, a PSA, what I mean by that is a public service announcement, and a GSA is a God-saving announcement. We good to go? All right. So let's start with Jesus asked us in Matthew, what good is someone to gain the whole world yet forfeit their soul? What have you forfeited? What have we forfeited because of our distractions? I have the answer, a ton. A ton. Many of which we don't even know, we didn't even realize because we were distracted. So largely due to the 24-hour distractions, we're finding it harder and harder to prioritize because everyone, even people we don't even know on social media, is in our face and in our space over what's going on in our own homes, with our own families, with our own kids. Sorry, I might get a little tough tonight, but how many besides me, while getting time to relax and watch a movie with our family, we miss half of it by searching social media at the same time? Distracted. Yep. So if you study the life of Jesus, you'll see countless times that people tried to distract him, even when they thought they were trying to protect him or defend him, including his disciples. So when Jesus was telling the disciples that he was going to be killed, Peter, one of his disciples, took Jesus aside and said, I rebuke this. This shall never happen to you, Lord. But you know what Jesus turned and said to Peter? Stand behind me, Satan. He said, you are a stumbling block to me, for you are not setting your mind on God's interest, but man's. What was Jesus saying? Distraction. Jesus never lost his focus. You could not distract him from his vision, us. People told him he could save himself to get off the cross. And we know that he could have stopped the madness anytime, anywhere. But if he saved himself, he couldn't save us. We won. Hallelujah. Okay, what about, anybody ever watch on the Disney or on the Discovery Channel Mythbusters? Anybody? With these two crazy dudes, Jamie and Adam. They're constantly blowing stuff up. They're fearless. You know that it's Jamie, the guy with the goatee. Well, I guess they both have goatees. The guy with the glasses and the hat. He owns like the place that they do all that blowing up of stuff. And so, but I love the way that they are determined to either prove something right, prove a myth right, or prove it wrong. But by the time we're done, we know if it's been busted or not, right? It's very entertaining to watch. Well, I want to bust a myth tonight. One myth that goes by the word multitasking. Now, don't raise your hand, but in your mind, who are our multitaskers in the congregation tonight? Some of you are like, Yep. Well, here are some multitasking facts. Multitasking is not a human term. It's a computer term. So humans can't even multitask. So what we do as humans is we switch tasks. We switch from this task to that task to this task to that task. What does that sound like? Madness. Lots of distractions. So just go with me on this example. So you're sitting at your computer on your keyboard and you're typing an email. And someone comes up to your door. And you think to yourself, oh, please keep going. Keep moving. Well, now you've taken your mind off of what you're doing. So you've already switched. You've switched to who's at your door before you even have a conversation. Then the person says, hey, you got a minute? And you're like, they can so tell I do not have a minute. So you turn, you're like, I really don't. I have to get this message done for tonight's service. And so you turn around, they're like, well, when would be a good time? And you're like, when hell freezes over. I don't know. Tomorrow, maybe? Tomorrow would be good. Okay, all right, I'll call you. All right, good. All right. So you switch back and you're like, okay, now where was I? And you're like, well, I'm already done. Might as well go to the bathroom. And then I might as well get a cup of coffee. Anybody? Does that story sound familiar to anyone? Yeah. So, humans just cannot multitask. Now, I will tell you that if you feel like you never get everything done that you should be able to in a given period of time, but you never stopped one time, you're like, I do not believe I went to the bathroom even one time today. You're probably doing a lot of switch tasking. That's probably the culprit. So the lack of effectiveness has everything to do with multitasking. Now listen to these statistics. The average person can only stick to a task for 11 minutes without being interrupted. The average person loses 2 hours of production per day by switch tasking, which means 25%. Now, I'm a numbers person, so I will tell you, a lot of times people think if it's under 50, it's not a big deal. If it's over 50, if you're not like a numbers nerd, I will tell you 25% is huge. Let's just say you make $10 an hour. How about you make $750 now? Is that a big deal now? What about you make $100,000 a year? I'm going to have to reduce that to 75. 25% is a big deal. Can you imagine if you got back 2 hours a day? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. That's 10 hours a week you would get back. That's just Monday through Friday. That's a big deal. And in the United States alone, it's an estimated of $90 million lost every year because of switch tasking. Now, I will tell you this about multitasking. It is a new interview question. So if any of you guys are about to have a job interview and they ask, even when they ask super friendly like, hey, I bet you're a multitasker. You like to multitask? You good? Do not say yes. Do not say yes, because that honestly can almost automatically disqualify you. What you want to say is, you know what? I love a lot of projects. I love a lot going on. But I don't really believe in multitasking because research shows that humans really can't. We switch tasks. So I like to be super productive and kind of batch my projects. So, I can do this for a while, then, set it down and then switch, but not switch back and forth because it makes me inefficient and I'd just be wasting a bunch of y'all money, honey. Okay? So try that. Another, which is an old interview tip, is if they ever ask you a question about, will sound so random, like, hey, do you like salt on your food? Or you just go ahead and salt your food before you even taste it? Say no. If you do, don't lie. Just say, that's an interesting question. Why do you ask? So if you answered yes, that means before you even are able to assess the situation, you take action. That's what salting your food before you taste it, because you don't know if it needs salt. That's like a doctor walking in and go, yep, you got bronchitis. You're like, I'm having gas pains. Was that? Yeah, that's not what we do. Okay, so the last on multitasking is what humans do is background tasking. Everyone asks, well, what about this and this? That would be like watching TV and eating popcorn or working out with music in your ears. That's background tasking. So we do that, and we do that well. So did you know where one of the original meanings of distraction came from? Oh, let me bust that myth first about multitasking. So the original word came from a French term related to cruel, a medieval form of torture. And so that's been a bad word for a long time, as we used to say to the kids, oh, that's a bad word, don't say that. Well, that might be as well, distraction. So distraction by way of literally, not figuratively, being physically pulled apart in 4 directions. So here's what the picture looked like. So during the time, one of their gruesome torture techniques was literally tying a person's 4 limbs to 4 different horses and tearing them apart. And they called that technique distraction. Is that crazy? So when you hear someone say, or you feel yourself saying, I'm being pulled in so many directions, that's where that came from. Yeah, I know it's awful. All right, I'll get rid of it. Okay, so let's talk about our public service announcements. So I recently listened to a professor of psychology from the University of South Florida, and he talked about he's considered the nation's foremost expert in cognitive factors like reasoning and vision and attention, especially related to driving, okay? So his lecture was titled, Distractions Are Literally Killing Us. So he shared a few stats that I'll share with you. 1.2 million people die in car crashes every year. That's almost 3,300 a day. An additional 20 to 50, which is a huge spread, million are injured or disabled because of car crashes. They don't die, but probably some of them wish they did. More than half of all road deaths occur among young adults the ages 15 to 44. And here's a scary, Larry, statistic. Sending or reading a text message takes your eye off the road for about 5 seconds. That's long enough to cover a football field if you're driving 55 miles an hour. Think about that. I mean, have you ever stood at one end of a football field and you look at the other? Doesn't it seem like a day away? I mean, it's pretty far, but we literally look at a text and we're at the other end. Over 90% of car crashes or road crashes are due to human error. You know what another word for human error is? Distraction or preventable. And 25%, there's that percentage again, of accidents are due to cell phone usage. So you remember I said 25% is huge? You apply 25% to those percentages, and that's 300,000 deaths a year because of cell phone usage, and 5 to 10 million people are injured because of cell phone usage. We've got to put down our phones. Honestly, now that I've learned all this in preparation for this week, I can no longer use my cell phone. I don't know what it is about my life, but the minute I talk about anything, make fun of my mom about something, it happens to me. So I will not. So do not text me or call me if you know I'm in the car. So who needs medieval torture, right? We're killing ourselves. We're killing each other because of a stinking cell phone that we're so addicted to. So here are some of the addiction confessions with some of his attendees in the research project. I've come to realize that 5 minutes without checking a text message is like the end of the world. Come on. I went a solid 5 hours without media and I was a wreck. Wow. The withdrawals were too much for me to handle. I mean, that is addiction language right there. So, in his lecture, he told 2 stories. Number 1, what happens to our brain when we try to do 2 things at the same time that seem simple but can have deadly consequences. And number 2, he gave us scientific proof of what happens when we trade the technological for something that might surprise you. His lecture was super cool because not only did he give these unbelievable stats, he led the audience through some of the simulation that he used in his research project with thousands of people. So he first talked about the statistics. Did you know that when driving on and using your cell phone, even in hands-free mode, let me repeat that. even in hands-free mode. It appeared to me through his research that there was zero difference between holding it and hands-free. So just let that myth go away when we think, oh yeah, we're hands-free, we're good to go. We are 4 times slower to respond when we're driving or talking on our phones or hands-free. 4 times slower. And we are 4 times, are you ready for this? More likely to crash than a drunk driver. They literally got people drunk to test this. And partly it's because most drunk people know they're impaired. So they take more precautions. They're more aware, looking for cops, looking for people, looking, for stoplights. Oh, I could tell you a story about my children on that one. Let's see, I'll go on. But he also talked about when people are on their cell phones, we don't know that we're impaired. So that's a huge difference too. It's the fact that if you're impaired and you don't even know it, it's even more dangerous. So we talked about the difference between talking to someone in the car versus talking to someone on the cell. And even though that both of those scenarios occupy our brains, the cell phone conversation is not going to stop when you're about to crash or when you're getting too close or when there's something in the road. Where someone in the car, they have the same risk that you do, so they're going to help you. So that's the difference when people are like, well, what about the distraction of someone in the car? That can actually be a good thing. So he talked about our line of sight. So everybody hold out your arm and make a fist and kind of look at your fist and the size. If you kind of look, just close one eye. He basically is talking about that being our line of sight of what we can see at any given time. So this is actually an eye analysis, an eye movement analysis. You can see the white frame is just the panoramic view of what's out the windshield. But the red is the eye movement when they're not on the phone. So you can see those little white dots, the edges in the middle of the red box. And then that's your normal eye movement. So you can see the sidewalk, you can see the oncoming traffic in the other lane. So you've got a pretty wide span view. But those who are on the cell phone, you can see how the blue, how that squishes down. You can only see as far as your bumper and as wide as your steering wheel. So what that means is you will not notice that person on the side of the road if they run out in front of you until they're under your bumper. Distraction is kill. So let's talk about this. This is a panoramic view. You can see it kind of looks like Dayton, Ohio, but I don't know where it is. But you can see the road ahead. You can see the red SUV over to one side. You can see a red kind of blob over there. That's a person standing there, maybe going to cross the road. So that's a panoramic view. But oftentimes we confuse ourselves and think that's how our eyes are. No, that's how our cameras are when you put it on a panoramic view setting. Our eyes do not have that kind of view. In fact, if you look at everything that's not blurry, that's the fist size, line of sight. So you can see those 3 cars in there, but you can't see what's going on unless you turn and then your line of sight, all right? So this was part of the simulation that he did, and I can't do it with you because I couldn't get the flow as well on here. But what he did was this is a highway in Chicago. He puts people behind the wheel in a simulation, and he made some adjustments to the view. But he asked for you to look at that and just drive like you would normally drive, and then he starts flicking back and forth on what changes, what he has changing in the video, and ask the audience to raise their hand when they see what he's manipulated in the view. And the majority of people cannot tell. Now, you may be able to say, because I was jerking it and it's right in front of you. But what is different about this is he adds that 20-story apartment building behind the 50 mile an hour. That's what he manipulated. And then now that you see it, you'll never miss it in the picture. But see how over on the right it's there, on the left it's not. So what he's saying is, now, not only do we have our line of sight with only a fist size, we have complete distraction if we're on our phone or on hands-free, but the human brain can only see about 4 objects at a time. And our government and the world's governments have spent billions of dollars trying to figure out how they can improve that, how they can improve situational awareness for pilots and soldiers. Because if you have 10, 10 people coming at you and you can only see 4 at a time, that's a problem in the military. So here he did the simulation where you see the car in front of you. Then number 2 is going to be the car beside you. Then number 3, you're going to look up at the sign. And since that sign's so big, it really counts as 2 objects. So there's your 4 objects. That's about all you can see. But the minute you look over at the 50-mile-an-hour sign, now you've taken your eyes off the 2 cars that are in front of you. So those are our limits. So there's your 4 objects. The sign counts as 2, and then you have your miles per hour sign. So limitation. So we are limited as humans on what we can see before we even put a distraction in our hands. So what's the cure? He literally suggests that there is a cure, and his research has indicated that it's accurate. So they looked at what happens when people put down their devices. Big surprise. That's the big one. But the second one is go outside and experience nature. Now, before some of you guys like, she's not going to start going down that tree-hugging, brouhaha stuff, right? Hang on. Research literally showed that when people went outdoors, like went backpacking out into nature, that it was an improvement of 50% in their ability to solve creative problems. Now, how did they do that? Before people would go out into the wilderness or out backpacking, they would give them some very hard problem-solving exercises that they pretty much knew could not be solved. And they for the most part, they weren't. They would send them out and do their backpacking or their, outside, and over 50% then were able to answer them when they came back. So their research has been so compelling that it's moved out of academics and it's now in the corporate world so they can understand how to better improve teamwork and cognitive problem solving into the wellness industry. So they were even featured in this big backpacker magazine because it's showing that, hey, you backpack, it'll make you smarter. So the bottom line, though, is laying down our phones will make us smarter. So, we all know that nature, kind of marrying this to the message here tonight, we all know that nature is one of God's beautiful creations, right? And through nature, God's able to teach us, speak to us, and provide for us. Luke told us that Jesus frequently withdrew to the wilderness to pray. So there it is. It's like, wow, academics think they're onto something, more brainy zany when I say, I think that's a God wink. I think there's something to do. So let's talk our GSA, our God-saving announcement. Jesus tells us in John 10:10, everyone knows that, the thief comes to kill, steal, and destroy. Right. I believe that the number one tactic of Satan in using to kill, steal, and destroy is distraction, by far, especially when we're a threat to him. Because some of you may be saying, nothing's going on with me. I'm like, well, you're probably not doing much to threaten Satan, which is pretty sad. All right? So because I have sisters that we were very close in age and then a brother that was right there in this 5-year span, the tattletale distraction story in Luke always cracks me up because I can relate. So in that story, there were 2 sisters, Mary and Martha. And Martha opened up her home to Jesus and the disciples as they were passing through town one day. And Mary wanted to hang out with Jesus. Smart girl, that Mary. But Martha, who remembers Brady Bunch? Marsha. Yeah, I always think that when I see that, Martha. But Martha was busy. The Bible said she was distracted, literally used the word distracted, getting things ready, and she didn't like it that Mary wasn't helping her. So she literally tattled on Mary to Jesus. She said, Mary won't help me. That's exactly what she said. Somebody call the Wambulance. But wait, how many times have you missed an event that you're even there, but you're too busy preparing and setting up and cleaning up, too distracted with everything but the moment. I'm there. And then I'm so tired, like my back hurts. I go and like, oh, the party's over? Wait, where'd everybody go? Anybody else? So the end of the passage, Jesus said, Martha, Martha, you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, and indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken from her. So we need to think about that. Mary had Jesus in her line of sight. Martha had too many objects distracting her. Again, distraction. So I want to talk to you about distraction proofing your life. And I believe that comes by having a vision for your life. And Proverbs even says, without a vision, people perish. And that does that mean that, look, you don't have a vision, so you're dead? You have a vision? You're dead. No, it means we're going to be like the walking dead. You remember I told you the story about the woman who died when she was 50, but we didn't bury her till she was 90? Get it? Do I need to give you some time? She was the walking dead for 40 years. She really didn't literally die at 50. She just gave up. She didn't have a vision anymore. So I love other translations of that same proverb. It says, without revelation, people run wild. Or my favorite is, without a vision is a people made naked. Now that's going to cause some distraction. And the prophet Jeremiah told us what God said about his vision for us. And this is a famous verse that a lot of people, this is their go-to, that his plans are to prosper us, not to harm us, to give us hope and a future. So he has a vision. That's a big vision. So if we want to weed out distractions and stop this crazy switch tasking and put the right things into our fist-size line of view, we have to have a vision to keep us focused on our holy power that has been given to us. We know from our Now series that we're in on Sundays that God has a vision for us and has had it before we were born. Remember, the Bible says before we were born, our days were written in his book. His vision, it's already done. So don't think like, I'm just waiting to hear. It's like, no, well, you're going to wait. Keep waiting. You've got to ask. You've got to pursue. You have to check it out. You have to do your part. So we know that at the end of a God-ordained vision is God. Who wants God standing face to face with you when you wake up on the other side? Yeah, we all do. So we have to follow his ordained vision for us. So how can a vision reduce our distractions? Well, here's a few. A vision arouses emotion. There's no such thing as an emotionless vision. If you know what your vision is, man, you are burning it at both ends because you even forget, oh, did I forget to sleep today? Or did I forget to eat? So when you're locked on a vision, that emotion allows us to imagine the greater emotions associated with our anticipated future. So think about if you're training for a marathon. As as you're hustling and doing your 3 miles and then 5 miles and then, oh man, this is the long run weekend. I know, I've run a marathon. I ran a marathon. Okay, I just want to point that out. So when you're training, you're imagining the real finish line, crossing it with your arms out and your head up and you're breathing in that breath of victory. Those are the kind of things that's the kind of emotions that happen when you have a vision. So a vision provides motivation, which is something that we need desperately when things get pretty hard or they get dull and boring, right? It's like, oh man, is this like boring? No, we need to look at our vision. And then a vision sets direction. It helps us provide laser focus. It's like our constant GPS that we can see and hear. So we all know people with and without visions. And we know there's a drastic difference in how they're living their life. Would you all agree? So, some are old. No, I didn't want to say that. Some are young. Some are retired. Some are in between right now. So let me speak to the retirees. When I ask a healthy retired woman, what are you doing with your life? And she answered me, just waiting to die. I think she was half kidding, but she didn't have a vision. I think she was half serious too. So how would you answer that question if I said, what are you doing with your life? Could you quote your vision in a millisecond back? So I know that getting old ain't for sissies, as I believe Betty Davis was her famous quote. But some that are so sickness focused when we retire, it's almost like, I used to make fun of my grandma. I'm like, all you talk about is your bowels, Grandma. It's like, and we talking about something else. I don't care that you did go, you didn't go, how many times you went. So it's but what we focus on grows. What we focus on, we become. So we have to be careful what we're focusing on, even if it starts as kind of playful. I tell retirees, I'm like, that survival and sickness focus you've got going on, man, that's called parenting. And you're done with that. Move on. If you're still alive, let's not stop. I told you guys I just came back from that 10-day pilgrimage in Israel, and there were 2 women in the pilgrimage that were in their 80s. I mean, come on. They were laser focused. One of them just had bladder surgery not too long ago, and it didn't go well for her, but she was pressing on because she was doing like Paul told us in Philippians, focus on what is good. And that's all she focused on, and then that's what she became. Life was good. So you younger peeps, I see you out there. Oh, yeah, I like the way you do it again. Let me just make sure you're doing that for me. Come on. Okay. All right. I see you. What's up? What's up? What's going on with your vision? You're not too young. In fact, think about it. If you figured out your vision before all of us did, look into how many more years you're going to get to enjoy it than when we finally woke up and whoa. Don't wait. Don't wait. And it's your vision. Your vision. God gave it to you. Okay? So I tell you what, something that I had my team do about 15 years ago that I tried to find mine today, but I don't know what happened to it, but create vision boards. Anybody ever create a vision board? Yeah. So for those of you who don't know what a vision board is, it's literally getting a piece of cardboard, or what's that board called? Poster board. And you have magazines that are stacked up to here. And everybody has magazines based on what they love and what they gravitate to, whether you're into race cars or fixing cars or house redesign or whatever you're into. And we came up with pictures that we would cut out of magazines on how we envision our life, how we think, why we think we're here. And if someone was to describe you in one board with pictures and words and quotes and phrases, what would it look like? That is a fun thing to do with a group of friends and co-workers. Create your vision board. You're never too old. Friends, co-workers, friends, no matter how old you are, co-workers, whether you work or not, Listen, your poker club. Get your poker club together, guys, if that's what you're doing. And then if you're in the middle, you're not retired and you don't consider yourself the young ones anymore, come on. You have your health, still have your youth, you have lessons learned on what not to do. I mean, you're so much further along. What are you waiting for? It's your time. Get a vision board done this week. And then you look at it all the time. It makes you smile if the beach is on it, or, it's amazing. So if you're struggling and you need help with this area, maybe it's something that you can look and take one of the promises from the Bible. David cried out to God and said, attend to me, answer me. I'm restless. I'm distracted at the voices of my enemy and the pressure of the wicked. Look, we know the end of David's story. King David You know, God said he had a heart like his. He had a happy ending. And he had a lot of sins in the middle of the beginning and end. So I'm telling you, if he can be distracted with all he has going on, we all get distracted. But we need to reach out to the person who can stabilize that. So distractions have been going on since the beginning of time with all humans. Think about it. Adam and Eve, distracted by the serpent. Remember that. Abraham and Sarah, impatience distracted them. Joseph's brother, jealousy, distracted them. Moses, stuttering, distracted him. Everyone tried to distract Jesus. Jesus was completely human. He knows distractions, what they feel like. So it's not like we're talking to someone that doesn't know what it feels like to be constantly distracted. He understood the value of spending time in nature with God. He knows the difficulties of our distractions and our limitations, but we're not alone because remember his promises that he will never leave us. He's walking right beside us through every distraction, through every limitation. He gave us his power to prove it, his life to prove it, his power to fight it, and he gave us our story, our vision to live it. So we have got to lay it down and start moving on. Everybody, you know, the Bible warns us that the days are evil, so we need to dress appropriately. Or better yet, Paul actually said, put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the evil schemes. We have everything we need. We talked about it over the weekend. Everything you need is in this small piece of geography right here. Look at how much space it takes up. Not much at all. So, distractions put us in the position to forfeit what is important. A vision puts us in the position to focus on what's important. Just like Jesus, we might be on high alert. Sadly, even we always have to be on high alert because even some of our best friends with the best intentions are going to distract us. Let's get in line with God's vision for our life. Let's step up and weed out the distractions and focus on what he has envisioned for us. It literally will save our life for all time and eternity. And at the end of a God-ordained vision is God.